Wonder what I'm gonna play today. Alright, let's just get that there. Move it along. There we go. Dude, what are you doing? What? Oh, I'm hooking up the Wii so I can play some GameCube games. Just play Dolphin. It's easier. Well, why? Wouldn't it be better to play the games on the consoles it was intended for? And besides, I ain't no pirate. It's not like I don't pirate ROMs or anything. Uh-oh. Hey, officer. Yeah, no. No, I swear it was just a mistake. No. So I get to pre-record my testimony, my alimony, baloney noni. So I get to pre-record my testimony? All right, well, I'm totally innocent. I mean, I didn't pirate any ROMs, and any ROMs I have are games I already made backups of at home. You know, I already own the games, so I don't know why I'm here. It's not like emulating is illegal or anything. I mean, the companies do it themselves, and with that out of the way, I guess I should just explain the reasons why I think emulating's better than playing the original consoles. So, let's go. Alright, we're going to start with one of my favorites, and that is better native resolution. Using emulators, you can actually set native resolutions higher than what the original developers had to set the hardware to, or what they were intended their actual resolution to be, which most of the time, higher the resolution, the sharper the image looks, the better the image looks. So that is always a good thing, especially for really, really old polygonal games like Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, where they used to run at like 240p, which by today's standards is like practically just a bunch of pixels. And if you not upscale it, if you re-render the whole game in like native 1080p or in 4K or 720p, pretty much anything higher than 240p, the game actually looks a lot sharper, a lot more stunning, and just a lot more pleasing to the eye. Especially with some kind of more current games like the GameCube, where they ran at 480p or 480i. Games like, let's say, let me just shoot an example, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. There's actually a lot of detail in that game, and once you run it at like 1080p, it looks so much better than the native resolution. And I should be comparing a whole bunch of games as I'm talking over some gameplay of it natively switching. That's another cool feature, being able to swap native resolution on the fly. But things like that that's just one good reason why I prefer emulating, the ability to make images sharper. I was going to put texture filtering as a separate spot, but I might as well just throw it in here, where the textures look sharper at a distance. There's a thing called anisotropy filtering, and I'm pretty sure I butchered that pronunciation. But a lot of games that even current games don't really support that really well, and since it's a feature you can actually enable in emulators, you can make games look a lot better that way too. The best example I have for that is maybe Mario Sunshine, or a much more current game like Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild barely has any of that filtering, and you can actually turn it on in an emulator, and it makes it look kind of weird, but so much better in the long run too. So yes, better native resolution. Okay, I was just about to say this is a big one for me too, but technically all of these are huge things because this is the whole purpose of the video. All these positive reasons why emulating is so much better than playing than the old games. Well, let's jump on to the second one. better frame rates with emulated overclocking. Now, the best way to explain this is there are a bunch of games that when you like zoom out of the camera, like it lets you, the frame rate tanks. It plays at 30 frames per second. For example, like The Sims Bustin' Out or the Herb Sims in the City. I'll probably throw some gameplay in there. It runs at an unlocked frame rate or 30 frames per second, but as soon as you zoom out, it dives into like the teens or the 20s in frame rate, and it's choppy and it's slow and stupid. And it even does that on the normal GameCube. Well, with Dolphin, for example, you can enable this emulated overclocking feature that actually boosts what the GameCube would be running at its clock speed and runs it higher, so you can actually keep that frame rate consistent all the way up to 60 frames per second. It is fantastic. It just keeps gameplay smooth, and it's a really nice feature to have. Now, another thing with emulated overclocking is running games at its unintended frame rates, like Ocarina of Time. I actually did a video on it. It was probably the last video I just did, where Ocarina of Time, I showed it running at 20 frames per second, its native frame rate, 30 frames per second, and 60 frames per second. And it looks so much smoother, even at 30, that you wish the game ran like that the whole time, but due to hardware limitations back then, they couldn't do that. And granted, the way they coded the game, if you run it anything higher than 20 frames per second, it breaks the game in half and then some. But it's a nice thing to see what it would look like if it ran at that, even though it's not 100% playable. The last two examples I have are running games at higher frame rates also than it's unintended to be, like Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild runs in 30 frames per second maximum on the Wii U and the Switch. But if you emulate it, there's some codes you can enable that actually lets it run at unlimited frame rates, pretty much. I can actually get with my current system to run Breath of the Wild at 120 frames per second, but I usually it's unstable, but you can get it up there, and the game is so buttery smooth. It makes you wish they just took a little bit more time or upped the hardware or something to get the game to play it like that. And the fact that you can emulate it and make it do that now on your own is just fantastic. Now, I'm probably going to be showing 60 frames per second gameplay, but it is still probably actually a comparison, but it's just so much better. Why wouldn't you run it at a higher frame rate? I mean, it doesn't break the game. It looks more smooth. You have the power to do it. Why not? The last example I have is Sonic Colors. That game actually ran at 30 frames per second. But with this certain gecko code, and you use that emulated overclocking I actually talked about earlier, it goes way higher to 60, and it's so much more buttery smooth. And I mean, that's all what I keep talking about. Higher frame rates equals a smoother experience. It makes me happy. There we go. Positive feature over. Let's move on to the next one. This next one is actually really handy in certain situations, but let's talk about it right now. Other controller options. You ever wanted to play Double Dash with an Xbox controller? Maybe play Breath of the Wild with an N64 controller for some godforsaken reason? Maybe Sonic Heroes with keyboard controls? Well, with an emulator, you just can. It makes it so much easier. With input controls, you can almost configure any controller that can plug into your PC to play any game with any kind of controller. Now, granted, you can actually probably buy adapters for consoles that let you play with different controllers, but most of the time, they're either incredibly expensive or they don't exist. Therefore, if you wanted to play Super Mario 64 with a GameCube controller, well, you have to still buy an adapter for the PC too. There's kind of a moot point right there, but the fact that most things have adapters for the PC because of its wider range of types of games, you can easily hook up something that works for the emulator, that can input, it can recognize inputs, and just play it through there. Just set up the controls to what you feel is comfortable. Everything should be remappable. That's probably part of the whole feature set on this, and you can play any game with any controller. I mean, even if you wanted to, you could probably plug in a driver, like a driving wheel, and you could play Mario 64 with that. You can play it with an Xbox driving wheel, PS3 controller, the Wii Motion control. Who the knows? sky's the limit. And that's the fact that it's so much easier to do that on a PC, other than having to go through adapters and hacking and all that other stuff. It just makes it so much easier for you to change the controller to play the way you want it to play. That's another good feature. Now let's get on to the next one before I get my legs chopped. NetPlay for multiplayer. Now, there are tons and tons of local couch co-op games that you can only play if you're literally right next to people. And they would have to come over to your house, you'd have to go over to their house to go play it. Well, with certain patches that some glorious people have made, and yes, I wish I could commend and know all their names and tell them thank you, because this is just a feature that like all emulators need to like have by default. But there are tons of games you can set up a fake server to create a fake local multiplayer game to let you play local multiplayer games online. The perfect example I have, and this is going to be a huge shill, there's a hack for Ocarina of Time that lets you play with other people via multiplayer. Multiple links running around, collecting treasure, doing things, it's awesome. Well, they have an online mode that lets you play that multiplayer mode online. So now you can have people from all over the place join your server and run around and collect stuff and beat Ocarina of Time that way. I stream it on Twitch all the time. A couple other good purposes are games like Mario Party. They patched Mario Party to be able to not disconnect through online NetPlay that lets you play Mario Party games online. Screw the Switch version, just play Mario Party 3 online, one of the best ones ever made. It just makes things so much better. Or you want to play Melee, one of the best fighting Smash Brothers games of all time? Well, there's no online for that, except for, yes there is, there's a NetPlay patch that you can play on an emulator that lets you connect to servers and fight with a whole bunch of other people online. It's just so nice and easy. Now let's hurry and get to the next one before I have it. Okay, this last one is really situational, but most of the time, if you can find an emulator on one device, let's say a PC, there's going to be a whole crap ton more on that device. So, one of my favorite reasons why emulating is awesome is everything's unified under one device. Now, the fact that I own all these different games, but I have emulators that I can play them all on, just makes it so much easier to switch between them or start one because you don't have to get up like I did at the beginning of this video, to go hook something else up, find the disc, put it in, let it load, blah, 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 blah. Here, I can just sit on my computer, it's situational. If I want to go play with other people, I could hook my PC up to a TV, or something like that. But I can just sit here, click the emulator, click the ROM, load it in, grab the controller I have right next to me on my desk that I prefer to play with, and play. Boom. It's so much more simpler. You can speed up the game to skip load times, especially if you have the power of the device you use is powerful enough to do that. It makes things the ease of life is so much easier. I have my N64, my PS1, my Game Boy Advance, my Game Boy Color, my Game Boy games, my GameCube games, everything I have, even my own PC games are all right here. So I don't even have, because PC games aren't even like emulatable because it just plays on the PC. Everything I have is right here. I could just start it up and play whenever I want. It makes streaming so much easier because I don't have to hook up a stupid capture card to the console I'm playing, especially if it's an old console that you need like an HDMI adapter alone to hook it up to the stupid capture device. I could just keep on ranting like that forever about whole streaming. It just makes everything easier. Holy crap. I mean, the same thing you could say for your phone. People emulate on their phone. It's not really a common thing to see publicly, but I know tons and tons of people do it. I do it. I got my N64 on my phone. I got my Game Boy on my phone. I could play Pokemon on my phone. Screw the Game Boy. Everything, you already carry your phone around. You bring it everywhere you go with you anyway. Why don't you put the games that you own somewhere where you can easily play it? It just makes sense. Everything's unified under one device. It's one of the best reasons why I think emulating is better than playing the original consoles. Okay, guys, I just broke out of prison. All I have to say is before they catch me, I hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to like and subscribe because I think I won't be here. That other Xeno's gonna have to make the content for now, because I think I'm going to prison. But I'm not going down without a fight. See you guys later. Guys, I'm innocent, I tell you.